those that will not be able to fully vaccinate their employees because of the refusal of some being their right to refuse, they will be required to be tested on a regular basis. Now, regularity will depend on the company, but usually it is every 2 weeks. This testing protocol is essentially based on those two principles of ensuring maximum safety for both workers and clients.
That was General Restituto Padilla, spokesperson of the National Task Force Against COVID-19, explaining the rationale behind a new vaccine mandate. Beginning December, all on-site workers must be fully vaccinated.
Those who refuse to get their COVID jabs must shoulder their own regular testing. The new policy would only cover areas with sufficient vaccine stock. Good evening, I'm Gretchen Ho.
I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. In a little over a week, vaccination will now be required for on-site work. The new mandate promises that no employee will be terminated on account of their vaccine status.
But labor groups say government is just skirting constitutional protections. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro gives us a front seat to the big story.
Beginning December 1, government is enforcing a no vaccination, no work policy in the workplace. The Interagency Task Force on Emerging Infectious Diseases issued Resolution 148B requiring on-site workers to be vaccinated before being allowed to come to work. But the IATF also imposed two important exemptions to this new rule. First, this rule will not cover areas that do not have enough COVID vaccine, as determined by the National Vaccines Operations Center. And the second, those who still refuse vaccinations cannot be forced or fired, but they will have to take RT-PCR tests every 2 weeks at their own expense. This was the IATF's way of skirting constitutional protections that bar government from requiring vaccination. But labor groups say there are still legal issues.
Ito ay kontra o lumalaban doon sa batas ng Republic Act 11525 na sinasabi na hindi dapat mandatory ang vaccination dito sa ating bansa.
The Labor Department said workers could still opt to work from home or use their remaining leaves. The resolution also allows the use of antigen tests when RT-PCR tests are not available. Tan Husay says the new rule is more of a burden than an aid.
Mabigat talaga yan dahil napakamahal ng antigen test, no? Mas mahal yung RT-PCR test.
As of Monday, more than 58 million COVID vaccines are still in storage. Government said they are confident they can accommodate mandatory vaccinations. But according to the most recent survey by the Octa Research Group, only 6 out of every 10 Filipinos are willing to get the jab. Tan Husay said instead of forcing or imposing vaccinations, it's better for the government to ramp up its information drive.
Ang incentives na maaaring ibigay sa mga manggagawa ay yung additional leave, mga bonuses, rice allowance, transportation, papunta doon sa vaccination site.
Tan Husay warned that they would take the issue to court. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro, we are One News.
To explain how this mandate will work, we have with us tonight Labor Department Secretary Silvestre Bello III. Good evening, Secretary Bello. Welcome to The Big Story.
Hello, Robbie. Good evening.
Hi, good evening, sir. Sir, obviously, this is hinged first on what is supposed to be a given na may access at saka may supply.
Yes.
But so on the given na meron, the problem should then be isolated on hesitancy and reluctance. Do we have data or an understanding of what is the level of hesitancy among workers?
Well, it's now established, Robbie, na yung refusal or hesitancy of workers to undergo vaccination has gone very low. Halos 90% na ngayon ang gusto na magpa-vaccine. Konti na lang ayaw magpa-vaccine. That is why the IATF came up with a resolution mandating na lahat dapat ng mga on-site workers ay magpabaksin na. However, kung hindi sila magpabaksin, hindi mo sila pwedeng tanggalin, no? Hindi ba? Pero you can require them or they are required na bago sila pumasok ay kailangan magpa-PCR test sila at their own expense. Yan.
Okay. So this still proceeds. Ay balikan ko po, no, yung sufficiency at saka supply at saka access. How do you
Yes.
determine that, and who makes that determination that in your particular area you are assumed to have access and enough supply?
Well, meron tayong yung task force on that point. Merong assigned agency or task force that will determine whether a location has sufficient supply of vaccine and it is available to the worker.
Okay, but is there leeway there, sir, for, well, alam naman natin, in the real world, marami problema. It's not just about vaccine supply actually landing in an LGU. There's the matter of people getting in line. There's a matter of people getting appointments. And for whatever reason, marami rin nagkakagulo dyan. May leeway po ba dyan for workers to say, I wanted to, pero nagkagulo, paano to?
Tama po yan. That can also be argued by the worker. Talaga, gusto nga niya magpa-vaccine, although sinabi ng task force na assigned for that purpose na may supply, pero he can also show to his employer or her employer na gusto ko na magpa-vaccine. Pero although sinabi ninyo available, pero I tried getting vaccinated, pero ang hirap. Hindi naman madali. So, it could also be argued that way. In that situation, hindi mo masisisi naman yung worker.
Okay, Secretary Bello, maraming salamat po. That was Labor Secretary Silvestro Bello III. As of Tuesday, only 33% of the country's population have been vaccinated, or roughly around 34 million Filipinos. Government is hoping to improve that number as it holds a 3-day national vaccine drive. Tonight's big number is 15 million. That's the target vaccinees of the Bayanihan Bakunahan Project from November 29 to December 1. About 170,000 to 200,000 vaccinators will be mobilized to 11,000 vaccination sites across 16 regions outside of Metro Manila.
These are the other big stories tonight. Cases may have gone down to record lows, but the health department warns complacency might just push infections back to 20,000 by next month. Presidential hopefuls submit themselves to drug testing. That's after the president repeated claims that an aspirant uses cocaine. And the rift between pole vaulter EJ Obiena and the Athletics Association is growing wider by the day. The Sports Commission's budget was even recalled due to the salary row. These big stories after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. COVID-19 cases are hitting record highs in Europe again, and some countries are reintroducing lockdowns.
Our very own health department is also getting alarmed, warning of a possible spike as early as next month. Pamela Vasquez gives us a front seat to the story.
As Europe grapples with a fifth wave of COVID-19 cases, the local health department is sounding the alarm here too. The DOH warns that daily COVID cases could climb back up to 20,000 by December. given loose compliance to health protocols.
The assumptions included, mobility will increase up to 100%, and then the minimum public health standards compliance definitely will be reduced when we increase mobility. And then the response of local government ay bumaba uli ang detection to isolation. Baka tataas tayo by December 15 up to again 20,000 plus active cases.
While there has been a decline in cases of late, the DOH says now is not the right time to be complacent.
Pag tumataas na po ang kaso, yung alert level system nasi-signal niya, at pag nakita niya ang isang area ay tumaas na doon sa threshold natin, mapupunta sila sa higher alert level. Pag napunta sa higher alert level, mas marami na uling restrictions. So we won't have the Christmas that we want.
Travel restrictions and partial lockdowns are in place in some countries in Europe again. Austria, for instance, has returned to a national lockdown. Even as tens of thousands took to the streets in Vienna to protest the restrictions. Germany also recently hit a record high of 65,000 new infections in one day, while the UK has been racking up more than 40,000 cases a day. The World Health Organization now says it's very worried about the spread of COVID-19 in the continent. The last time there was a surge in Europe, Asia followed a few months after.
It just shows that the minimum public health standard is a real good public health measure and a preventive aspect in terms of the transmission of the COVID-19.
As Christmas season approaches, the DOH is reminding Filipinos to prioritize getting vaccinated against COVID-19 and to strictly observe protocols. The government recently began rolling out booster shots to A1, A2, and part of A3 priority groups. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez, We Are One News.
With vaccine hesitancy still high in provinces, some LGUs are taking extreme measures. Take the case of Sultan Kudarat, which now requires vaccination before entering indoor establishments. Jem Avancenia with the details.
Hundreds of residents in Sultan Kudarat mobbed a vaccination site in a mall on Tuesday. Vaccine recipients who wanted to get their jabs were met with inconvenience.
Maaga pa kami dito, ma'am, tapos yung bago lang dating, nakauna pa sa amin. Sayang lang yung pagod namin.
The crowding at the vaccination site happened after the local government imposed a no vaccination, no entry policy for indoor establishments.
Kailangan po kasi, ma'am, kasi pag magpasok ka sa establishment, ma'am, kailangan ng yung card.
Even during the coronation night of the Miss Sultan Kudarat on Monday, only those fully vaccinated were allowed in. Governor Suharto Mangudadato said the policy aims to address COVID-19 vaccine hesitancy, which remains high in some towns.
Yung mga brother Muslim natin, takot sila sa bakuna. But nung pinadala yung mga team, together with Mayor Capina, through the explanation, pumayag sila.
Despite the inconvenience, some residents in Sultan Kudarat are in favor of the no vaccination, no entry policy for their own safety.
Mas pabor man siguro sa amin as a driver. Mas safer siguro pag nakabaksin lahat.
Aside from this, LGUs are also ramping up their vaccine information drive to encourage more people to get their shots. Based on the data from the Provincial Health Office, less than a third of the target population in Sultan Kudarat have so far completed their vaccination.
Aside from no vaccination, no entry policy, Governor Mangudadato said they are also amplifying their information drive on vaccine so that more and more Kudarateños would be encouraged to get vaccinated. For News 5, Jem Avancenia, We Are One News.
The easing of travel restrictions has breathed new life into air travel. For one, passenger volume at the Ninoy Aquino International Airport has seen an uptick. Arriving passengers from domestic flights has jumped 74%, while the number of departing passengers rose by 60%. Meanwhile, arriving passengers from international flights have risen by 36%, departing passengers by 19%. Authorities say easing rules such as short and facility-based quarantine is contributing to the rise in passenger volume. Foot traffic is expected to rise further as the holidays near. National Privacy Commissioner Raymond Liboro is set to meet with telcos to discuss the recent spate of SMS scams. Speaking on agenda, the commissioner warned the public not to provide any personal information nor click any links from unknown senders of messages. Liboro added that this has been happening too in other countries, might be the work of a globally organized crime syndicate. He also said that there is no evidence yet that the info used for these scams are from accomplished contact tracing forms.
and we'll be meeting to discuss this. They have also done the research on this, no, their own investigation, and we'll be consolidating that. But in all indications, again, this is a scam, a swindle, and a fraud.
For the big story in sports, China's tennis star Peng Shuai has finally resurfaced. There has been mounting international concern over her whereabouts after she made sexual assault allegations. Peng reappeared in public at the youth tournament in Beijing, according to photos released by the organizer. The tennis star also met with the International Olympic Committee via a video call to confirm her safety. 3 weeks ago, Peng alleged that a former member of the Communist Party's ruling standing committee sexually assaulted her. Meanwhile, in the NBA, the Brooklyn Nets have taken the top spot in the Eastern Conference after taking down the Cleveland Cavaliers 117-112. Kevin Durant led the way for the Nets with 27 points, 6 rebounds, 9 assists, and 3 blocks. The win gave Brooklyn its third straight victory and sole ownership of the East with 13 wins against 5 defeats. Elsewhere, the Memphis Grizzlies stunned the Utah Jazz en route to a 119-118 victory. With 14 seconds left in the game, Memphis big man Jaren Jackson Jr. won a tip against Rudy Gobert. From there, Ja Morant drove down the lane and kicked it to Jackson, who sunk the game-winning three-pointer to give the Grizzlies the victory. Meanwhile, flashed on your screen are the other scores from Tuesday's games. Time for another quick break. When we return, Senator Ping Lacson and Bongbong Marcos underwent drug testing in a bid to clear their names following the president's allegations that a presidential hopeful uses cocaine. And a champion pole vaulter EJ Obiena claps back at Patafa over what he calls their shifting allegations. And scrambling for words when speaking in a conference, Peppa Pig might just be a good way to save your talk. Just ask UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson. More of these big stories after the break.
Perhaps I've always been the Peppa Pig world. Not enough.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. The president is still at it, repeating claims that a presidential hopeful uses cocaine.
To clear their names, some presidential bets went ahead and had themselves tested. Dave De Vera with the report.
During a site visit of General Santos City's airport and seaport, President Duterte once again went off script. He reiterated his claims that a presidential aspirant uses cocaine.
Bakit hindi natin hinuli? Bakit hindi mo hinuli, Presidente? Hindi mo alam ang mga mayaman. They go on yate, or in the air. Doon yan sila magsup-sup ng
While the president has yet to name the alleged cocaine user, some candidates wasted no time and underwent drug testing, like the tandem of Senators Ping Lacson and Tito Soto. Results came back negative for shabu, marijuana, ecstasy, and cocaine. Bongbong Marcos Jr. meanwhile presented 2 drug tests. one from November 10, even before the president first made the allegations. This was for a permit to carry firearms outside residence. It came back negative for shabu and marijuana. The second test was conducted November 22nd.
Minarapat ni Presidential Aspirant Bongbong Marcos na sumailalim ulit sa isa na namang drug testing, but this time specifically for cocaine. At yun nga yung isinagawa kahapon sa St. Luke's Medical Center sa BGC. At ang resulta, kagaya ng ibigay ko sa inyo, ay negative.
NBI confirmed that they received the drug test result of presidential aspirant Bongbong Marcos, while PIDEA, on the other hand, said they are not repository of results from other drug testing facilities. As for other aspirants, Manila Mayor Isko Moreno says he's willing to undergo a drug test before the public.
Anytime ako, wala akong problema. Kasi we owe it to the public, wala namang masama siguro doon.
Senator Bongo also expressed willingness to be tested. Senator Manny Pacquiao meanwhile insists a drug test should be a requirement for holding public office. Labor leader Leody de Guzman says aspirants taking the test is just a gimmick and he will only undergo a drug test if COMELEC requires it. But he still urges government to investigate the alleged drug user. For News 5, Dale De Vera, we are One News.
Here are the other election stories we're watching. The Commission on Elections may come up with its decision on the cancellation case against Bongbong Marcos by late December. The preliminary conference is scheduled on November 26. Afterward, parties have 3 days to file their respective final arguments. And Vice President Leni Robredo signed a deal with Qualimed Health Network to provide assistance for referred patients prescribed with molnupiravir. The experimental oral pill treats mild to moderate COVID cases. Robredo's office will issue a guarantee letter to any qualified patient referred by its volunteer doctors. The patient will then be assessed and prescribed molnupiravir by Qualimed.
And these are some of the other big stories around the globe. 45 Macedonian tourists, including 12 minors, perished after the bus they were riding in Bulgaria crashed in flames. 7 passengers who managed to leap out of the bus are now recovering. The accident's cause is still unclear, but authorities say the bus may have hit a highway barrier either before or after it caught fire. The U.S. is advising its residents not to travel to Germany and Denmark due to a rise in COVID-19 cases there. The CDC issued a level 4 very high recommendation, while the State Department released do not travel advisories. Other countries in the CDC's level 4 list are European countries like Austria, Britain, and Norway.
Another big story in sports, the Senate has recalled the proposed 2022 budget of the Philippine Sports Commission. This was after it failed to intervene in the ongoing row between pole vaulter EJ Obiena and the Philippine Athletics Track and Field Association. During the Chamber's budget plenary debates, Senator Pia Cayetano called out the PSC for its hands-off approach in dealing with the issue. By recalling the PSC's proposed 364.2 million peso budget, lawmakers are calling on the Commission to do a better job in protecting Obiena. In a new statement, Obiena questioned Patafa over its sudden shift from alleged embezzlement to not paying his coach Vitaly Petrov on time. He also stressed that delayed payments is not a crime. Obiena then fired back at the association, saying they could have directly paid his coaches. Doing so would have allowed him to focus on training rather than accounting and administrative work.
As Peppa might say, oh goody. Seems like jitters got the best of British Prime Minister Boris Johnson during the Conference for Confederation of British Industry. Instead of talking about business, Johnson raved about Peppa Pig.
Speaking before business and political leaders, Johnson had apparently lost his place in his notes. Now, he tried to search through them but sighed and said, "Blast it."
The British Prime Minister then talked about the iconic cartoon character, even sharing anecdotes about his recent visit to a Peppa Pig theme park.
yesterday I went, as we all must, to Peppa Pig World. I don't know if you've been to Peppa Pig World. Who's been to? Hands up anybody's been to Peppa Pig World. Not enough. But I loved it, and Peppa Pig World is very much my kind of place.
Now that's why it's good to watch your cartoons, no? Are you aware of Peppa Pig?
I'm aware. I don't necessarily know the lines.
Pareho tayo.
Diba?
Oo.
Yung TikTok nga, hindi ko nandiyan.
Pang
Peppa
ano
Pig
Gen
pa.
Z na yan eh. Ano lang ako, pang Pokemon lang ako. Ano ba yung sa batch mo? Okay, 32 days to go before Christmas. O yan na,
Ayan,
diba? On
okay.
cue na si Santa Claus.
32 days.
Tuloy pa rin po ang Pasko, mga kapatid. And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. We are One News. Have a good evening.